Let's talk French Rev. Here's where it gets a little crazy. Make sure you're taking notes. Notes are mandatory. Memory at the end, you can do that, but you have to process the notes in some way. Oh, man, that's great. That was almost the exact plan I had. Almost. There we go. I hope this shh, sorry. Let's try this again. Uh-oh. Okay. All right. I'll settle for that. Ready? So yesterday when we left off, the French revolutionaries had decided to try to keep the king. That was the plan anyway. But weren't interested in like totally getting crazy. But that's going to change, and that's kind of what we're looking at today. Drastic changes, war, craziness, chopping off heads. Yeah, lots of them. Okay, so here's what's going on. You had that called the Bread March or the March of the Parisian Women or whatever, where the women of Paris, hearing the rumor that Marie Antoinette was hoarding grain, decide that they're going to go get her and Louis and bring them back to Paris. Bring it back to Paris to show their support for the National Assembly. Now, the fact that the revolutionaries, the Parisian women in this case, could round up a king and queen and basically imprison them, which is what they've done pretty much, has other monarchs a little bit concerned. Now, the English, they did this thing way back when, but they're still concerned. But mostly German and Austrian monarchs. Now, you have to understand there is an Austria, but it's part of what's called the Habsburg Empire. Okay, we won't get too technical with that. There's no such thing as Germany. There's something called the German Confederation, but there's no Germany, the country. This is 1789, 90. Yeah. So Louis, he finally comes around, and now that the fact that he's lost all his power, he comes around to some of the limited powers that the National Assembly offered him. He says, yeah, I'm okay with that whole keeping the king thing with limited powers, no problem. But they're not going to be offering him that anymore. He knows he's kind of in trouble. And what's happening is the countries outside of France are starting to talk about reinstating Louis, coming in and totally resetting everything. So France preemptively declares wars on these countries that are starting to threaten or feel that they're threatening France. So France declares war on Austria. And what you're basically going to get is France is often going to have few allies. And usually the allies in these French Revolutionary Wars are countries that the French beat and then said, as part of us beating you, you have to agree to back us up in these wars. So Austria and Prussia are the two countries that basically declare war against France. They did. Yeah, they did. And Austria and Prussia are sort of talking about it. And they put out this little declaration that basically says that their goal is to reinstate King Louis. They want to put him back on the throne. And, when somebody says that, like, hey, this is our plan, the French see it as, okay, well, how are they going to carry that out? They're going to attack us. We'd better just go ahead and let's get it on, Prussia was a German country that was no Germany. You have German-speaking countries like Prussia, Bavaria, Hanover, but they're not Germany yet, but they speak German. Okay. So you get war. War throws France into upheaval. There's chaos. Parisian crowds attacked the king's palace, killed royal guards, mobs were killing and imprisoning nobles and priests. And what many of the most revolutionary people, the ones that are the most sort of like crazy about this whole thing, they think that the highest people in society who have the most to lose from a revolution are the ones that are conspiring against the French people to bring in countries from the outside and put everything back the way that it was. So everybody gets scared, fear starts to take over, and what happens is the National Assembly starts to get taken over by radicals. Radicals are people that want to totally change society, that want to push the revolution forward, that don't want to slow it down and try to ease it up. They want to go pedal to the metal on this thing. So when it comes to the church, for instance, whereas before they said, okay, you have to pay taxes if you're clergy now, you don't get out of that. They're talking about totally obliterating the church, like completely getting rid of it. So you get a new national convention. They draft a new constitution. And in this constitution, they eliminate the monarchy. So no more king. So they're going to have a single national lawmaking body, the legislature, that's the National Convention. This is a revolutionary thing here. All men can vote. Still not revolutionary enough to include women, but all men can vote. You don't need property qualifications. They adopted a new calendar. These guys, the thing is, their Enlightenment ideas really kind of like, they think that sort of applies to like everything. They are enthused about the idea of making everything make sense and be organized. They would have looked at the calendar and said, why do you have a month with 31 days and a month with 30 days and a month with 28, but sometimes it's 29? And why do you keep doing that? Do it based on reason. So they adopt a new calendar. And it was something like something like 12 months. I think it was 12 months of 30 days. And then they had like a week in there that was like an odd week of 5 days or something like that. They, as you saw in the video yesterday, they divided the day into 10 hours of 10 minutes apiece, or 10, what was it? 10 hours of 100 minutes? Was that what it was? Yeah. So they're really big on this whole metric system thing. The one thing that does carry over is the actual metric system. So they kept that. They rolled back. Later, this stuff's going to get changed back. The French don't use the revolutionary calendar anymore. They went back to the Gregorian calendar, as they call it. Okay. So revolutionary changes, but they have to figure out what to do with Louis XVI. Here's the problem with this, is that, okay, even if you say no more king, if Austria comes in, Prussia comes in, whoever else, and they defeat you in war, and then they set up a king again, well, if Louis around, that's easy to do. But if you kill the king, he can't be king anymore. And that's what a lot of them are going to start to think about doing. Some, even the moderates, think, yeah, if we kill him, then he can't take the throne again. They got to figure out, okay, who is the next guy in line? Maybe there's struggle for power. They don't want that to happen. So the radicals use some of Louis's letters to other European monarchs to discredit him and accuse him with plotting against the people of France. And he's found guilty of this, of having conspired against the liberty of the nation. Oh yeah, they kill him by the guillotine. They cut his head off. Well, the letters he had were bad, but this guy was probably dead one way or another. There's almost, yeah. I mean, they weren't. What do you do with this guy? Here's the thing. You could keep him in France, and then you've got the problem of like some French people who thought the king should come back. They're going to try to get him out of jail and put him back in power. All right. You could send him out of France. Well, then he can run all over the place. He can run to all these other European countries that France had a king. And by the way, his wife is Marie Antoinette's Austrian anyway, so her brother's kind of upset about this whole thing. So if he's running around out there, he can just try to build up armies and then come back in and take over France again. So you really have few choices. You have to eliminate this guy. Was he guilty of conspiring against the nation? Depends who you ask. In terms of evidence, there's not. I mean, it's not. He wasn't. He sent some bad letters when he knew he was in trouble. He sent some letters that. Well, they're basically he's sending letters to kings of other countries saying, "Hey, could you come in here and like bring in an army maybe and help me get set back up again?" It's bad because the army that he's going to bring in will be killing the French army, and he's the French king.
So he's like going against his.
Yes, his people, and that's what they get him on. Yeah, but he doesn't see it as going against the French people. He thinks that society has been taken over by a bunch of crazies mostly, and that if he can just get rid of those crazies, the more moderate people will take over. You know, so that's kind of what he's going for. Plus, he wants to keep his job. Okay, so they cut his head off. So, okay, so you got this new radical government, and fear, like I said, is the big sort of thing that's flying around. Now, the citizens of Paris, but not necessarily of the rest of France, had a lot of enthusiasm for France becoming a republic, which is a democratic country with no king. The United States is, in a way, a republic. So, so there's a lot of debate over the country's future that's going on in the National Convention. You have the radicals known as the Jacobins or the Jacobins, whichever way you want to say it. They believed in radical change. They felt they were the voice of the regular people. The Girondists or Girondists were moderates. They thought the revolution had gone far enough. I mean, they killed the king, for goodness sake. The king is dead. And so they want to protect the middle class. They think that if revolution goes too far, then even just like middle class people who were kind of moderate, they could get swept up in this too. But as the different countries outside of France start to team up on France and attack it, the fear starts to build and build and build and build. And the Jacobins, the ones that are the radicals, the ones saying the nation is under attack, we have to take drastic measures to protect it, they're the ones that gradually gain power.
The ones who are attacking gradually gain power?
The ones who are saying the nation is under attack. The French people in the government. They're saying, you know, we look, there are alliances to try to destroy our country. The French national anthem is actually all about the French Revolution. The lines in it are, you know, come on, basically, come on, all citizens. The day of glory is here. There's people attacking us. Let's water our fields with their blood. All sorts of, you know, it's really warlike stuff. So you've got these alliances. The French, by the way, the French revolutionary ideals, they're talking about spreading them to other countries. They see these as universal. They see the Declaration of Rights of Man and the Citizen as applying to everybody. And so they think we have to spread these revolutionary ideals to other countries. They're also going to say, look, if other kings, you know, if monarchy, if kings and queens ruling countries, if they exist anywhere, then our country is never safe from that, and all sorts of stuff like that. So the French armies are going to expand the borders of the country. They thought that the Enlightenment ideals meant that your country had natural boundaries, you know, a natural boundary like a mountain range or obviously a body of water like a river or something. But they're you know, they're kind of losing a little bit. Eventually they're going to win though, because this is really one of the first countries to do this. They conscript all military age males into the military. This is the first real military draft. Previously, if you fought in armies, it was either volunteer or you were paid as a mercenary to do it, or you were a professional soldier. These were citizen soldiers. The idea was that every citizen had to do their part to defend the nation. That's not something that was around before. Often if you were in an army and a king wanted you to go fight, you were fighting for that king. You were sort of fighting for your country, but there wasn't any sense that people owed that to the country. When I'm done the notes, I'll close it out and you can mark it up. So they conscripted male citizens to get enough soldiers to protect the country. But they also thought that people like women and even old people and children had a part to play in fighting the wars. Women would sew and grow the food to support the country. The children would, run around and sell newspapers, and the old people would tell of the glories of the French army and all sorts of stuff. Everybody had their part to play. So the Jacobins and the Girondists don't get along. The Girondists, remember, they're in the middle. They want to moderate. They want to try to ease things up a little bit. The Jacobins want to keep it going. So they do typical thing. They do a little smear campaign. The Jacobins say the Girondists are going to try to bring back the king. Once the king is back, you'll lose all your rights. He's going to kill everybody that, they'll bring back another king. The one king's dead, but you can always find somebody who wants to be king. So the Girondists are plotting against the country too. The Jacobins take over the National Convention. And what they're going to do, some of you have taken notes ahead, and that's really good, but I want to make sure you keep pace with me, please. So this is going to be what the the Jacobins are going to do, is they're going to crush all opposition brutally if necessary. This is the reign of terror. So they start chopping off heads. How do they find people whose heads they want to chop off? They say to people, listen, you're gonna form committees, organizations, which their job is to find suspected traitors. Then you turn them over to the revolutionary courts, and we'll see if they've been plotting against the nation. Now the thing is there's not a lot of due process here. The whole prove them guilty thing isn't to them as important as rooting out all the possible bad apples. So, I mean, they're killing, what was it? It's 40,000 people, Jules. They're killing 40,000 people. You obviously killed probably lots of innocent people. They couldn't have all been plotting against the French people. Anyway, so lots of people get killed. And the organization that begins to run the country is known as the Committee of Public Safety. And the guy, Maximilien Robespierre, do I have a slide of him? Oh, darn. Maximilien Robespierre is the guy who rules the committee. And he's saying the revolution can't stop. It can't stop until it's complete, until, liberty and freedom and all that is complete across the country. And who gets to say when it's complete? The Committee of Public Safety. So France is recovering from its one war. Things start to ease up a little bit. Things start to look a little better. So some people start to say, hey, maybe we can stop the head chopping for a little while. Maybe this has gone far enough. The danger has passed. So what does Robespierre do? Does he say, yeah, you're probably right. No. He accuses these people of treason, sends them to the guillotine. But he starts to go a little bit too far. People start to say, no, Robespierre, Maximilien Robespierre. He's kind of running the country at this point. No official title. I think he's the chairman of the Committee of Public Safety, which, like you said in the video, was the committee in charge of chopping people's heads off. So not really public safety. Yeah. So he says no. He's a radical. He's somebody that he believes in what he's doing. He thinks it's going to be better for France when it's over. But eventually he loses his support, and once that happens, in people's minds, he starts to become an enemy to the French people. I mean, after all, he is the one ordering lots of them to have their heads chopped off. Eventually, Robespierre is the one who loses power when leaders turn against him, and they execute him. They cut his head off. It is irony, absolutely. So the Jacobins lose their power, and this is when the terror comes to an end. So things get a little more like calmer after this. You get a new constitution, but this new one kind of rolls back some of those changes. So before all males could vote, now it's going to be all males with property. So they bring that property thing back. And this is the sort of everything swinging back the other way. The Jacobins went crazy with stuff, and they made all these changes, and not everybody liked it. So people started saying, let's put some things back. They then set up something called the Directory. And this is going to be the new government. It's another government. They're trying to put down rebellions, and they're in the kind of the middle. So they're putting down rebellions from royalists who want to go back to having a king, want to put things back all the way, and from radicals, people that want to take the revolution again. So they have to, they have to go in and put this stuff down. And they're really not very good at what they do for a lot of reasons. They don't really solve the problem of the rich and the poor. There's still that going on. They looked inept and incapable. They look like they stink at their jobs. Those are for whiteboards, so yeah. Okay, so what happens? You're going to get this guy Napoleon coming in. The French army successful. They're what was called the levée en masse. The levée en masse. This was the conscripting, drafting people into the armed forces. This was pretty successful for them. And you get Napoleon. He's pretty successful. Quick promotion. He's the general by the age of 26. He wins battles. Very exciting. Okay. So with lots of popularity, you had those crazies running the country. Then you had the Directory who weren't crazy, but they weren't very good at their jobs. He decides he's going to make his move. He's out in Egypt. I think it was Kate the other day that said it was pretty crappy that he just sort of ran away from his people. I don't know if that was you, but was it you? No, somebody else. He is fighting in Egypt. They kind of lose the battle there. He runs back to France, and he decides this is going to be his time to mount a coup, overthrow the government, and take power. That's what he does. That's 1799. He takes power. No, he was a general in charge of an army, but he wasn't in charge of the country. The Directory was one running the country. Yeah. And he does it, like you say, how can he do this? He does it because the people support him. That's really the key thing here. Yeah. And what they're looking for is at 1799, the French Revolution has been raging for something like 10 years at that point. So 10 years of revolutions and counter-revolutions and courts to try enemies and spies and wars and heads getting chopped off. They want somebody who will just make it all safe and normal again. And they think that somebody who's very powerful and very strong will do that. And he kind of does. But we'll look at that tomorrow. How's that?